NBA playoffs time. Ninja here with John Henson, with Christopher Walder. And guys, let's talk about John's old team, the Milwaukee Bucks. They are underdogs here against the Indiana Pacers, although we have seen some series price odds movement here. Like the Pacers were around minus 230 on April 14th. Now sitting here on the 15th, around minus 200 or minus 190. There you see some of the series prices there, courtesy FanDuel. John, we talked about on the huddle a couple weeks ago, teams that sort of need to get hot to close the regular season and go into the playoffs on a high note. And it just so happens that the Bucks are one of those teams. So how important is that Bucks 8-game win streak coming into this series against a pretty damn good Pacers team?
You can kind of look at it two ways. From a better perspective, you could say like, wow, their value is kind of high, so probably not a good team to bet on at the moment. But, from a Bucks fan perspective, you could say, hey, we're playing well. So I think it's two-pronged, hey, look, the value is probably going to be on the Pacers, in my opinion, because the Bucks still don't have one of the best shooters to ever play this game. But for the Bucks, you're feeling good. You got Bobby Portis back. You could not be in a better spot for morale and how you should be feeling coming into a playoff series where you're expected to lose, which I'm a little shocked about. It's the odds obviously are dropping rapidly as we saw, as we're seeing day by day. But I played with a man. I've seen it. That's not a guy you necessarily want to count out and fade. So we'll get into that a little later when we start talking about our series bets and stuff.
Yeah, I do have a question or two about Giannis. But before we get into that, Chris, sort of interesting from my perspective, at least, that Milwaukee has a better net rating when Dame is actually off the floor, in large part to his defense or lack thereof. So is this a series that the Bucks can win without Dame because of his liability on that defensive end against a pretty high-octane Pacers offense?
I'm going to say no, because I think what you gain defensively by not having Lillard out there on the hardwood isn't enough to overshadow what you're losing and the offensive deficiencies with which come when he's not available. So I looked at some numbers here, some really key numbers that will help my cause here. Since March 20th, when Lillard first missed time due to this blood clot issue, the next leading scorer on the team was Kyle Kuzma at 15.5 points. So Lillard was averaging 24.9 points at the time. That's obviously a major drop-off from your number two scorer. But of course, those points are obviously divvied up between not just Kuzma, but Brook Lopez, Gary Trent Jr., and Kevin Porter Jr. as well. The Bucks went 16-8 this season when Lillard was unavailable, which is impressive when you're just looking at it like that. But of those 16 victories, 6 came against a team with a winning record, and 5 of them were against the same two teams. They beat the Detroit Pistons 3 times and the Minnesota Timberwolves twice. And that 6th victory was against a Los Angeles Lakers team that was missing the following names: LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, Dorian Finney-Smith, and they played Bronny James 30 minutes that night. So it's not exactly like that record really stands up on its own. If you think the Bucks are better off without Lillard, all the power to you. This is the playoffs. Dame time is an actual thing, and I think his absence, which could be the duration of the series. I know we got some news recently that they are hoping he could be back at some point in the playoffs, but the Indiana Pacers are no slouch, and this series may be over before the time he gets to come back.
Bronny James just out here catching strays here on the preview. And you're right, playoff time is Dame time. We've seen him do it over and over and over again in the playoffs. But John, let's talk about Giannis real quick. You played with him. You know all about him. You know his makeup. Explain how much of a leader Giannis has developed into, and will you be rooting for your former guys here?
Yeah, I'll be rooting for, I'm still friends with guys within the organization, especially, and then, Giannis and the guys on the team, played with him respectfully. I've had some really good years with Giannis. He's allowed me to do that because of how effective he is. I was open a lot. So I'm rooting for him and to see his development. I was in the gym working out the day he got off the plane, and they were like, hey, we got this kid coming in from Greece. Hey, how about y'all just play one-on-one and, just work out, right? So Coach comes in, Giannis comes off a plane. We play one-on-one. He could barely get a shot off, right? He just wasn't used to the size and the length. I was fresh out of college, 2-time defensive player of the year. It was just different, right? But I could just see his savviness and his drive and his determination at a young age. And, to go from where he came from to, it is literally just a testament of his work ethic and how much he wants to be great. I remember him telling me early, said, hey, if I could average 25 points a game for the next some odd years, I can pass da-da-da. That was his mindset, right? Like, I'm not even thinking like that, right? I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I guess, right? Like, this is young, I guess 25, whatever. Good job. But like, he's there, right? So, and he's a leader by example, works hard, if not the hardest worker on the team. He cares about his craft from free throw shooting to you see everything he does on the court. He works on his 3-point shooting. So, he just holds that organization accountable at all levels. If the guy that is your guy is working like that and being a good person and kind of have that Tim Duncan-esque effect on the team, there's a reason why they're always in the top 4 competing for a championship every year.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of influence he has on a newcomer to the squad, like a Kyle Kuzma. Giannis has been there before, he's won. So it'll be interesting to see what rubs off on Kuzma because his responsibility is going to see a bit of an uptick here. And on that note, guys, talk to me about potential X factors here. Could be a player, could be, on the sideline, could be an element of the game. John, I'll start with you. What could be a big X factor here for you between the Bucks and the Pacers?
I'm gonna have to go the supporting cast of the Bucks, right? Like Kevin Porter Jr. We talk about Kuzma, those guys. Who is going to step up in that supporting cast to try to make this a series? Because the Pacers, we haven't even talked about them, are playing probably better than most teams in the NBA right now, and we know the Pacers are kind of a front-running team, right? Like once they get rolling, they can pack you up pretty quickly. So are the Bucks going to have the supporting staff, as Chris kind of talked about, to make up for the Dame Lillard? We talk about Dame's defensive efficiency, but offensively, Dame can take over a game. You look up, he's hit 3 threes in a row, you're down 10 points. So what will the Bucks supporting cast do? I think the jury's out on that.
And Chris, how about you?
If you want to look up and down the Indiana Pacers roster, you can take any X factor that's not named Tyrese Haliburton or Pascal Siakam. They had 9 guys average at least 9 points during the regular season. So if you were going to go with a veteran point guard like TJ McConnell or a big man like Obi Toppin or a young gun like Benedict Mathurin, like take your pick. Indiana is loaded and is supremely deeper as compared to the Milwaukee Bucks, especially when they're without Damian Lillard. But I'm going to be taking an X factor. I'm going to be taking a hint here from John. I'm going to be going with Kevin Porter Jr. The Bucks are 16-4 this season when he scores 10 or more points. All but 2 appearances came off the bench. And again, Milwaukee needs scores this postseason. I don't necessarily trust Kyle Kuzma to deliver at an efficient rate in this series. I know as a Toronto Raptors guy what Gary Trent Jr. is capable of. He's very hot and he's very cold. At least with Kevin Porter Jr., he seems to be one of their more consistent scorers. I'm very happy that Bobby Portis is back in the rotation because Milwaukee desperately needs him. But I think someone like Porter Jr. can have 1 or 2 games of 20 or more points, maybe help Milwaukee steal a game on the road and make this more of a series.
You mentioned Obi Toppin, who was very kind to your boy last year in the playoffs when betting player props. So what sort of interests you guys this year in this series in terms of player props? John, have you earmarked any players and any markets that you'll be looking for? And there's a lot of candidates here between these two teams.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything right now. I'm assuming they're waiting on the Dame news, obviously, to see kind of where they need to place everybody's numbers. I'm going anything Giannis, depending on what I can find, maybe series leading scorer, because one thing he does do is he puts the onus on himself. That is just who he is as a player. That is just who he is as a person. When he's down his running mate, he takes that into account for sure. Like, I've been there. That means he's like, okay, I got to do this for better or worse, right? So I'm going to be looking at all Giannis props, especially with the scoring and, see where I land. But he's going to try to. And then last year, what the Pacers did, he remembers that. So I think Giannis goes off this series. It won't be his fault they lose. I'll tell you that.
Lots of candidates here, Chris. Who's caught your eye?
Lots of candidates, but I'm with you, John. It's all Giannis all day, every day. Because something that head coach Doc Rivers has been tinkering with over the last couple of weeks is making Giannis more of a floor general, making him the facilitator, the guy who brings the ball up the court. Defenders obviously gravitate towards him anyway, and what's best for the team is if those defenders zone in on him, uses his length to kind of find players in the corner, get some open looks, especially from three-point range for the Bucks. Since April 1st, in 6 total games since some of these adjustments been started to make, Antetokounmpo has finished with double-digit assists 5 times. And if you look at the numbers projected for Game 1 of this series, it's only at 7.5 assists at -114. And I think that number is only going to go higher as the series progresses. And I'm curious if this production will maintain, though, because there is going to come a time in this series where Rivers needs Giannis to be more of a scorer, especially if Milwaukee finds itself down on the scoreboard. It's like one of those issues that the Pacers have had throughout the course of the season where Tyrese Haliburton looks to pass the ball more rather than being a spot-up shooter, someone who can put 20 to 25 points on the board. I think that's going to be an issue with Giannis in this series, how he kind of balances being a passer and being a scorer. But right now, 7.5 assists in Game 1, that's a number I really like.
Let's talk about your guys' series bets here now. And as we sit here, on a Tuesday before Game 1, the Pacers anywhere from sort of -200 to -230. Looking at FanDuel here, they're around -215. The series spread you see here, Indy -1.5 games at +114. And then total games markets, the numbers set at 5.5 and the over a bit chalky there, anywhere from, sort of -190 to -200. John Henson, I'll start with you here. What are you looking at betting for this series between the Bucks and the Pacers?
I'm going to have to go, if I'm going to take an angle +1.5 for the Bucks, because if you give me a guy that, essentially, without Jokic, he probably wins 2-ish of those MVPs. And he's been top 5 for the last, he's been top 5 since I was playing and left the league. So give me that guy in 2 games every day of the week.
And Chris, finish it off here. What are you looking at betting series-wise for this one between the Bucks and the Pacers?
Yeah, I really like that bet from John there. Last year in the first round of the playoffs, the Bucks took 2 games against the Indiana Pacers, and they didn't have Giannis for any of those games. Damian Lillard was averaging 31 points. He obviously stepped up to the plate, but he's not around in this series. The bet that I'm taking the Indiana Pacers to win this series in 6 games. We just showed it there on the screen, +430 over at FanDuel Sportsbook. I personally respect the fact that the Bucks did close out the season winning their last 8 games, but the Pacers were 14-4 over their final 18 games and 15-3 on their home floor coming back from the All-Star break. And even if Lillard does return to the rotation this season against Indiana, he only shot 35.5% from the field. His efficiency was not great. I think Indiana's depth will prevail in this series. They did get to the conference finals last year, which I think a lot of people tend to forget. And I think the absence of a true number 2 scorer on the Milwaukee Bucks to assist Giannis in this series is going to ultimately lead to their downfall.